Welcome to Capital Catch-Up, your deep dive into the latest action from the halls of Congress. I am Victor.
And I am Lainey. Today, we are unpacking a substantial wave of legislative proposals, judicial nominations, and debate from the House floor. Let us start with a sector that affects every American dinner table: agriculture.
That is right. The Senate has introduced a series of bills targeting specialty crops, which include fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, and nursery crops. First, we have Senate Bill 4651, the Increasing Insurance Access for Specialty Crops Act. This bill wants to amend the Federal Crop Insurance Act to create a Specialty Crop Advisory Committee.
And that committee would bring in industry experts and regional producers to advise the Federal Crop Insurance Corporation. The goal is to make sure insurance policies actually fit the unique risks of specialty crops, like sudden weather shifts or supply chain disruptions. It also strengthens the role of the Specialty Crops Coordinator to act as a direct liaison. It is currently referred to the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry.
Building on that, Senate Bill 4652, the Advancing Automation Research and Development in Agriculture Act, looks to the future. It proposes to reauthorize the Specialty Crop Research Initiative and establish a competitive grant program for agricultural mechanization and automation.
This is really about labor challenges and efficiency, Victor. The bill plans to reserve at least $30 million annually through 2031 to fund research into technologies that reduce manual labor, improve farm worker safety, and speed up commercialization of automated systems.
And then there's Senate Bill 4654, the Expanding Market Access Act, introduced on June 2, 2026. This one focuses on the international stage by amending the Agricultural Trade Act of 1978. It authorizes funding to improve foreign supply chain infrastructure, like cold chain capacity and port facilities, to prevent product loss in developing markets.
It also mandates a biennial report on the competitiveness of United States specialty crops from the Secretary of Agriculture and the United States Trade Representative, analyzing foreign trade barriers. Plus, it establishes a multi-year funding schedule through 2031.
To round out the agricultural defense, Senate Bill 4650, introduced by Senator Schiff, is the Improving Pest and Disease Preparedness for Specialty Crops Act. It amends the Plant Protection Act, raising annual funding to $150 million starting in fiscal year 2027 to prioritize cooperative agreements in high-risk states.
Moving from the fields to our families, let us look at Senate Bill 162, the Recruiting Families Using Data Act of 2025. This bill focuses on the foster care system by amending Parts B and E of Title IV of the Social Security Act. It requires states to develop data-driven family partnership plans to improve the recruitment and retention of foster and adoptive parents.
It emphasizes active consultation with families, youth with lived experience, and community providers. The goal is to increase kinship placements, reduce the reliance on group or congregate care, and make sure the pool of foster families reflects the diversity of the children in the system. States would have to start reporting this data annually to Congress by fiscal year 2028.
There is also Senate Bill 639, known as the Clergy Act, introduced by Senators Britt and Hassan. This bill creates a specific time frame for members of the clergy, religious orders, and Christian Science practitioners to revoke their existing exemptions from Social Security coverage.
This allows them to opt back into the system to secure federal retirement and disability benefits. They would have to pay the applicable self-employment taxes, and once they revoke the exemption, they cannot opt out again. The Internal Revenue Service would also be tasked with an outreach plan to inform eligible professionals.
For older Americans, we have Senate Bill 870, the Native Elder Act. This amends the Older Americans Act of 1965 to support Native American, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian elders. It establishes an 11-member Older Americans Tribal Advisory Committee to guide the Assistant Secretary for Aging. It also expands in-home assistance to include home modifications and requires reports on service gaps and caregiver support.
On the animal welfare front, Senate Bill 1454, the Fight Act of 2025, proposes major amendments to the Animal Welfare Act. It targets rooster fighting by explicitly banning gambling on these events, restricting the interstate transport of roosters, and prohibiting adults from bringing minors to these activities. It even allows private citizens to bring civil lawsuits against violators.
Now let us talk about our public servants and veterans. Senate Bill 4744 is the Take Care of America's Veterans Act. This is a massive legislative package aimed at reforming the Department of Veterans Affairs.
One of the biggest pieces of this bill is authorizing the concurrent receipt of disability and retirement pay for combat-disabled veterans. Historically, many veterans had to choose or had their benefits offset. It also protects survivor benefits for spouses who remarry and expands educational and economic opportunities.
On the healthcare side, Senate Bill 4744 mandates improvements in mental health, suicide prevention, traumatic brain injury treatment, and rural healthcare access. It also targets Department of Veterans Affairs infrastructure and hiring processes to reduce waste.
Speaking of mental health, Senate Bill 825, the Fighting Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder Act of 2025, requires the Attorney General to propose a program providing public safety officers and 911 dispatchers with better access to treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder and acute stress disorder.
It recognizes that these professionals experience high rates of trauma, but local departments often lack resources. The Department of Justice would have to submit a report within 150 days outlining evidence-based programs, including telehealth options.
Switching gears to correctional facilities, Senate Bill 736, the Lieutenant Osvaldo Albarrati Stopping Prison Contraband Act, increases the maximum prison sentence to 2 years for providing unauthorized cell phones to inmates. It also requires the Bureau of Prisons to review its contraband policies.
On a commemorative note, Senate Bill 567, the first Rhode Island Regiment Congressional Gold Medal Act, honors one of the first integrated military units in American history. Composed of men of African, European, and indigenous descent, they served during the Revolutionary War, notably at the Battle of Rhode Island in 1778. The medal will be displayed at the Rhode Island State Library.
And Senate Bill 1289, the 25th anniversary of 9/11 Commemorative Coin Act, directs the Treasury to mint gold and silver coins to mark the upcoming 25th anniversary of the September 11th attacks. Surcharges from the coin sales will support the National September 11th Memorial and Museum, and the program must be cost-neutral to the government.
We also have Senate Bill 1377, the Theodore Roosevelt National Park Wild Horses Protection Act. This requires the Secretary of the Interior to maintain a genetically diverse herd of at least 150 horses in the park's South Unit, balancing herd preservation with natural resource protection.
Let us talk about transparency. Senate Bill 872, the Stop Secret Spending Act of 2025, targets other transaction agreements. These are flexible funding arrangements used by federal agencies that currently bypass some standard reporting. This bill mandates that they be reported on usspending.gov within 3 years.
This ties directly into what we saw on the House floor on June 11, 2026. The House introduced House Resolution 1335, which condemns government fraud and improper payments. The resolution calls for enhanced financial oversight and mandatory eligibility verification to stop the loss of billions of taxpayer dollars.
Yes, the June 11th proceedings also featured tributes to retiring Marine Lieutenant Colonel Matthew A. Lamb, community advocate Agostino Tran Cao, and the California Conservation Corps. There was also support for the Mass Timber Federal Buildings Act and discussions on deferred action for childhood arrivals protections and Arctic drilling.
The day before, on June 10th, the House honored retiring Food and Drug Administration forensic expert Dr. R. Dwayne Satzker and celebrated the Buffalo Juneteenth Festival and the Westminster Economic Development Initiative. We also saw Representative McClintock criticize Yosemite National Park's reservation systems, advocating for increased public access.
The House also acknowledged the Senate confirmation of Tony Mattivi as a United States District Judge for the District of Kansas.
Speaking of nominations, we have several new ones to watch. Justin D. Smith has been nominated to be United States Circuit Judge for the 8th Circuit, replacing the retiring William Dwayne Benton. Brock Dahl is nominated as Legal Advisor of the Department of State, replacing Reed Rubenstein.
Walter Clayton has been nominated for 2 roles, United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, replacing Damian Williams, and Director of National Intelligence, replacing Tulsi Gabbard.
We also have Anthony J. Powell nominated to be United States District Judge for the District of Kansas, replacing the retired Julie A. Robinson. For the National Labor Relations Board, James Macy has been nominated to replace Marvin Kaplan, and David M. Prouty has been nominated for reappointment. Finally, Brett Matsumoto is nominated to be Commissioner of Labor Statistics, replacing Erica L. McIntarfer.
As we wrap up, listeners should keep an eye on how these agricultural and veteran reform bills progress through their respective committees, and whether the Senate moves forward with the confirmation hearings for Walter Clayton and the other nominees. We will also watch for any action on the anti-fraud measures highlighted in House Resolution 1335.
That is all for today's Capital Catch-Up. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.